Have you ever walked into a room and felt like the world forgot you were there? Like the conversation moves around you, not through you? Maybe you used to get calls every day, friends checking in, kids needing advice, grandkids excited to tell you something new. And then slowly, those calls slowed down. The house grew quieter. The calendar, once filled with birthdays, brunches, and get-togethers, started looking a little too empty. If you felt this way, you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. But something has shifted. And today, we're going to talk about how you can still find joy, peace, and even happiness right in the middle of that silence. Because here's the truth. At some point, life starts to feel like it's happening without us. Our children grow up. Our friends move or grow distant. People get busy, and we slowly become background characters in the stories we once starred in. It's not anyone's fault. It's just the way time flows. But just because others forget to check in, doesn't mean you have to forget who you are. There is so much life left to live, especially when you stop waiting for someone else to bring it back to you. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly enjoyed your own company? I don't mean just sitting in front of the TV or passing time with a book. I mean actually being with yourself, laughing at your own thoughts, dancing in the kitchen because your favorite song came on, sitting quietly with a cup of tea, and realizing that, for once, the silence doesn't feel heavy. That kind of joy, it's real. And it starts when you stop expecting others to fill the empty space and start seeing yourself as enough. You might say, "But I don't want to be alone. I didn't choose this." And I hear you. That ache, that longing for someone to say, "I miss you," or "I was just thinking about you." That's real. But here's something to hold on to. Being alone doesn't have to feel like being abandoned. It can become something beautiful. Not overnight. Not all at once. But slowly, like the morning sun creeping into a quiet room. One of the first things you can do is shift your perspective on solitude. Think of it like this. You've spent your life giving. Your time, your energy, your heart. You were the one people leaned on. You showed up every time. And now, for once, you have a chance to show up for you. What if this season, this quiet, wasn't punishment, but permission? Permission to rest. Permission to reflect. Permission to rediscover the parts of yourself that got lost in taking care of everyone else. You might be surprised by what you find. Maybe there's a hobby you let go of because life got too busy. Painting, writing, sewing, singing. Or maybe there's something new calling to you. A language you want to learn, a local group you've thought about joining, even something as simple as gardening again. Doing something creative with your hands, something that makes time disappear and your heart feel full, is one of the fastest ways to reconnect with yourself. You're not too old to start something new. In fact, this is the perfect time. Another shift comes when you start creating moments instead of waiting for them. Think about it. How many times have you stared at the phone, hoping it would ring? Or checked social media to see what everyone else is doing without you? That kind of waiting steals your days. But when you flip the script, when you become the one who reaches out, who sends the handwritten note, who surprises someone with a kind message, it changes everything. You go from feeling forgotten to becoming unforgettable. And yes, sometimes people won't respond. That hurts. But it's not about the outcome, it's about the act. You're keeping connection alive. And just as important, you're reminding yourself that you still have something to give. Kindness, encouragement, wisdom. These are not things that fade with age. If anything, they grow richer. And sharing them brings a sense of purpose that fills even the quietest afternoons. But here's the part that might be hardest, and most freeing. You have to let go of the idea that your value depends on who remembers you. You are not the sum of how often people visit or call. You are not less because others are busy. Your worth doesn't diminish in silence. It shines differently. Quieter, perhaps. but no less bright. There's a deep kind of peace that comes when you learn to enjoy being with yourself. When your morning coffee becomes a moment of gratitude. When you step outside and notice the birds, or the way the light moves through the trees. These aren't just small things. They are reminders that life still surrounds you, that you're still part of it, that your story isn't over. And if you're feeling lonely today, that's okay. Let yourself feel it. Let the tears come if they need to. But don't stay there. Don't build a home in sadness. Let it pass through you like a wave. And then find something, one thing, that brings a flicker of joy. It could be playing your favorite song, or writing a letter to someone who once mattered. It could be baking your favorite pie and giving it to a neighbor. These little acts, they aren't small. They're stitches in a quilt you're sewing for your own soul. So today, if you're sitting in a quiet house, wondering if you still matter, know that you do. You matter because you are still here. Because your heart still beats with stories, with compassion, with dreams you haven't given up on yet. And because happiness doesn't always come wrapped in company. Sometimes it's waiting for you in your own reflection. You just have to look, really look, and say, I'm still here, and I still deserve joy. There's something powerful that happens when you stop chasing after the life you used to have and start embracing the one you have now. It's like turning a corner and finding the sun still shining, even if you hadn't noticed it for a while. You begin to realize that happiness isn't something other people hand you. It's something you learn to create, to hold, to protect. And it starts with remembering your own name, your voice, your needs, your beauty, your worth. That doesn't mean it's always easy. Some days, you'll feel the sting of being left out. A family gathering you weren't invited to. A friend who forgot your birthday. A child too caught up in life to check in. You might sit with your coffee, scrolling through photos you weren't part of, and wonder if they even noticed your absence. And those moments, they hurt. Deeply. But pain has a strange way of revealing what still matters to us. That ache in your chest. It's not weakness. It's proof that you still care. That your love hasn't grown cold, even if the world feels distant. Now here's where things begin to shift. Because once you stop trying to silence the pain and start listening to it, you discover something surprising. The ache becomes a compass. It shows you where connection is missing. It points to what you value most. And instead of trying to fill the hole with busyness or resentment, you can begin to fill it with intention. That might mean picking up the phone and calling someone first. Not out of desperation, but out of love. It might mean sending a letter, not to guilt them, but to remind them that you're still here, and that you still care. And sometimes it might mean building a new circle. You're never too old to meet someone new. Community isn't just for the young. It's for the human heart. Look around. There are people near you right now who feel the same ache you do, who wish someone would say hello. Join a local class, a walking group, a church event, or even an online gathering if that's more comfortable. Show up. Not for them, for you. Because you deserve to be seen again. Not just by others, but by yourself. One woman I met, let's call her Helen, started volunteering at age 74. She told me she felt invisible after her husband passed and her kids moved out of state. She didn't know what to do with her time anymore. The quiet became too loud, she said. So one day she walked into a community kitchen and asked if they needed help. She started by peeling potatoes. That was it. But within weeks, she was laughing again, making friends, feeling useful. I stopped being lonely, she told me, because I found somewhere I mattered again. Helen didn't wait for someone to pull her out of the dark. She lit a match and found the way forward. And you can too. Now let's talk about something else that tends to fade when we're alone for too long. Our sense of purpose. When the roles you once held start to slip away, the caregiver, the family organizer, the friend always ready with advice, it's easy to feel like your usefulness has expired. But that couldn't be further from the truth. You still have so much to give. Whether it's sharing stories with your grandchildren, offering wisdom to someone younger, or simply being a kind and consistent presence in someone's life, your value hasn't disappeared. It's just evolved. Purpose doesn't have to be loud or grand. It can be as quiet as checking in on a neighbor, planting a garden, writing in a journal, or praying for someone in need. It's anything that reminds you that you're still part of the world, that your days still have meaning, and sometimes your purpose is simply to heal, to give yourself the kindness you've given to others for so long. That might mean setting boundaries, taking naps, drinking more water, or forgiving yourself for things you still carry. It might mean learning to be proud of yourself, not for what you've done, but for who you've become. Let me tell you something else you may not hear often enough. You're allowed to enjoy your own company. You're allowed to dance in the kitchen with no one watching, to take yourself out to dinner and smile at strangers, to read a book and get lost in its pages without checking your phone. These little joys, they're not just distractions. They're acts of self-respect. They're reminders that you don't have to shrink just because the world has gone quiet. You can grow anyway. There's this myth we're often sold that says happiness only comes from togetherness, from being surrounded by people all the time. But the truth is, some of the happiest people are those who've learned to love solitude. They've discovered that peace isn't the absence of others, it's the presence of themselves. And the more you practice showing up for yourself, the less you need someone else to make you feel whole. Still, I know there are days when even the strongest heart feels heavy. When memories creep in, old birthdays, past conversations, laughter that used to echo through your home, let them come. Let them visit like old friends, because even sadness is proof that you lived, that you loved, that your life has been full. You don't have to push those memories away, but don't let them be the only thing you hold on to. Make room for new ones, even if they start small. A new recipe, a sunrise walk, a favorite song you haven't played in years. Because here's the most beautiful thing about being human. No matter how many chapters are behind you, the page in front of you is still blank. You get to decide what goes there. You get to decide how this part of your story feels. Not them, not your children, not old friends who've drifted. You. And if no one else has told you this lately, let me say it now. Your presence matters. Your voice matters. Even in the quiet, you are still here. And that alone is reason enough to keep going. Not just surviving, living, laughing, growing, even dreaming, if you still have the heart for it. So today, if the silence feels a little too loud, take a deep breath. Place your hand over your heart and feel it beating. That rhythm, that's life, that's purpose. That's your soul reminding you, you're not done yet, far from it. There's still beauty to discover, still laughter to share, still peace to find. You might be alone sometimes, yes, but you don't have to be lonely. Not when you have the power to choose yourself, to care for yourself, to honor the life you've lived and the one you're still creating. There's something sacred that happens when you start to enjoy your own presence. When the quiet no longer feels like punishment but becomes a kind of peace you protect. And the more time you spend there, the more you start to hear yourself again. Not just your thoughts, but your spirit, your intuition, your laughter. It's like finding an old friend you forgot was always with you. You. And once you reach that place, something even more powerful happens. You stop needing to be remembered to feel relevant. You begin to live not because someone is watching, but because you are finally present. Fully, lovingly, gently present with your own life. That's where true happiness grows, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Think about it. You've spent years showing up for others, raising children, working, helping friends, being the rock everyone else leaned on. Somewhere in there, your needs got quieter. You pushed them aside because other things felt more important. And now, for the first time in a long time, you have the space to listen inward. What do you need? What makes you feel alive now? Not 30 years ago, but today? Maybe it's walking barefoot in the grass. Maybe it's picking up a paintbrush or writing a letter to someone you'll never send it to. Maybe it's traveling, near or far, or simply moving your body with music playing in the background. You don't need an audience for your joy to be real. You only need the courage to follow the quiet things that make your heart feel light again. But sometimes, we hesitate. We worry that it's too late, that the best years are behind us, that the world has already moved on, and we're just tagging along at the end of the parade. But I want to gently challenge that thought. What if these years, these slower, quieter, more reflective years, are actually the most honest ones? What if now, when you're no longer chasing approval or stuck in busyness, you're finally free to be who you've always been beneath the noise? There's a freedom that comes when you let go of what people think you should be and start living the life that feels right in your bones. Maybe that means slowing down. Maybe it means speeding up. But either way, it's yours. No comparisons, no guilt, just the steady unfolding of your truest self. And once you give yourself permission to live for you, something else begins to change. Your confidence comes back. Not the kind that needs applause or validation, but the quiet kind. The kind that shows up when you walk into a room and know, I belong here. Whether they notice me or not, I belong. You begin to smile more. Not because anything big has changed, but because you have. You're not waiting anymore. You're not hoping someone else will save you from your loneliness or fill your calendar. You've learned how to enjoy your own rhythm. You've started making peace with the mirror. And in doing so, you've stepped into a different kind of power, one that doesn't fade with time. Now that doesn't mean you don't still miss people. You do. And you always will. Some friends were once so close you could finish each other's sentences. Some family members used to call you every week. And now sometimes days or weeks pass in silence. It's okay to miss them. It's okay to wish things were different. But don't let the ache steal your joy. Let it be a reminder of how deeply you've loved and how much you still have left to give. And here's something else that's important. Don't be afraid to open new doors. Age isn't a deadline, it's a doorway. You're allowed to start again, to reach out, to let someone in. Whether it's friendship, companionship, or even love, your heart is still beating and it still has room. If there's someone you've been thinking about, someone you haven't spoken to in a while, send the message. Make the call. Not to fix the past, but to say, I'm still here, and I still care. And if they don't respond, that's okay too. You still did something brave. You still showed up, and that's what matters most. See, the journey of learning to be happy alone isn't about turning your back on people. It's about turning toward yourself. It's about realizing that the one person you'll never lose, the one soul who's been with you through every season of life, is you. And the more love, respect, and kindness you offer that person, the more life starts to feel meaningful again. You wake up and look forward to your morning tea. You find joy in the little routines. You stop measuring your days by who called and start measuring them by how deeply you felt, how much beauty you noticed, how much peace you carried inside you. The world may still forget, but you won't. You'll remember who you are, and that's more than enough. If you've ever looked around and thought, is this all that's left for me? The answer is no. This isn't the end of your story. It's a new chapter. One where you stop waiting and start choosing. Where you stop feeling forgotten and start remembering yourself. You are not invisible. You are not used up. You are not behind. You are becoming. Becoming someone who can sit in a room and feel full. Becoming someone who doesn't need noise to feel heard. Becoming someone who knows how to be still and still feel whole. And that, my friend, is the kind of happiness no one can take from you. Somewhere along the way, The world convinced us that being remembered is what makes us matter. That if people stop calling, if the invites stop coming, if the spotlight moves somewhere else, then our value must have faded. But that idea? It's not just false, it's harmful. Because you are not a calendar entry. You are not a missed message. You are not someone's forgotten errand. You are a life, a legacy, a soul still unfolding, with stories still to tell. When you stop tying your worth to other people's attention, you begin to understand something beautiful. That the most important person who should never forget you is you. Not in a prideful way, but in a gentle, grounding way. The way you'd remember a garden you planted with your own hands, or a melody you've always loved. You remember yourself with care, with warmth, with patience, and you begin to live differently. What if you gave yourself permission to be happy without needing anyone else to validate it? What if you treated your days like they mattered, because they do? Start by honoring the simple things. The scent of coffee in the morning, the warmth of a bath, the music that takes you back, the soft laughter that bubbles up when you remember something silly from long ago. These small joys, these seemingly quiet moments, they're not filler. They're sacred. They're yours. And if you're still grieving a friendship that faded, or a child who grew distant, or a life that looks different than you imagined, it's okay to grieve. Let yourself feel it. Mourn what was. But don't let the past write your future. Because the person you've become through all of it, that person deserves joy too. You can love people and still learn to release them. You can miss someone and still move forward. You can feel sadness and still choose to smile again. These are not contradictions. They're proof that you are beautifully, fully alive. And when you find yourself doubting, when the silence creeps in again and makes you wonder if you still matter, come back to this truth. You are still here. You are still learning, feeling, loving, breathing. You are still worthy of connection, of laughter, of beauty, of peace. And even if no one calls today, even if your name isn't spoken aloud, your existence is still a gift. So don't wait to be remembered. Remember yourself. Choose yourself. Wake up and decide that you are worth showing up for. Light a candle just for you. Cook a meal just because you like the way it smells. Wear the color that makes you smile when you catch your reflection. Dance in the kitchen. Sing badly. Cry when it's needed. Laugh when it sneaks up on you. Talk to yourself like you would to someone you love. Gently, kindly, with patience and delight. And then, when someone else does call, when the invitation does come, when someone does finally say, "I've missed you," you'll be ready. Not because you were waiting, but because you never stopped living in the meantime. You'll have stories to share, light to offer, joy that doesn't come from them, but overflows to them. And that's how you change the story, not by erasing loneliness, but by transforming it into something softer, something sacred, something fully yours. So, if this message touched you, if you saw yourself in these words, don't keep it inside. Share it. In the comments below, tell us what spoke to your heart. Let someone else know they're not alone. Because someone else out there is sitting in their own silence right now, waiting for a sign. Maybe your words will be the spark they've been hoping for. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us keep walking this journey together. You don't have to do it alone. None of us do. Here's to living fully, even in quiet seasons. Here's to joy without permission. Here's to remembering who you are. You're still here, and that is more than enough. Always.